Good evening, Poultry Keepers, and welcome to another Poultry Keepers 360 Live. We are happy to have you with us tonight. Um, I'm here in Florida, and tonight Jeff and Carrie are out to the APPPA conference in is it Dallas,
Yeah, just north of Dallas,
just north of Dallas, Texas.
Allen, Texas.
So we have a good show for you tonight, and coming up in just a few seconds, we're going to bring it to you. Stand by. All right, tonight we're going to be talking about vitamins, minerals, and metabolizable energy. I've been getting a lot of questions about that here of late, so I thought it was time to bring it up on the show. So, Jeff,
Yes, sir.
just to get us started,
Okay.
what are the purpose of vitamins in poultry diets?
Most of them are to support health, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like your vitamin A is really important for your retinols and stuff like that, and keratin is for like eye and different internal organs. They play a little bit in skin. Um, Vitamin E is going to be your immune system support, as well as it also is going to aid the skin. Both A and E are going to transfer because a hen requires a higher level of vitamin A and E than like a growing or developing bird. A lot of that gets deposited into the egg, you know, for either you to eat or the chick. Um, B vitamins are your calming vitamins. Again, they're going to support healthy liver function. A lot of those get deposited in the egg as well. They just they're drivers, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
body systems. And um, yeah, vitamin D, that's your sunlight vitamin, but a lot of birds don't really get enough. And they're finding a connection between vitamin D and actually immune system support as well. Before, vitamin D was often ignored, and it was felt that 30 minutes of sun exposure would develop all the vitamin D you actually needed. Well, they're rethinking that, and they're seeing that vitamin D, pretty much in all living species, does play a beneficial role. Vitamin D also is key for your calcium absorption. So it's going to be tied into your eggshells. There's your quick rundown. So,
So I have a question real quick. In reference to the vitamin D, does when you're using artificial lighting, does that help or hurt or make a difference?
well, if as long as it's full spectrum, right, and they're getting the right wavelength, then the bird's going to be able to process some vitamin D from that. Um,
Okay.
and the vitamin D levels, like that I recommend in the feed at 1,500 to 2,000, you're still safe. It's not like you're overdosing on the vitamin D. I mean, honestly, I'd like to see vitamin D closer to 3,000, but there's no data to support that. And I don't want to be the only lone lunatic out there doing it. But I could see benefits of vitamin D levels at 3,000. Um, especially when birds are being challenged or, really been laying for a long time and haven't had a proper molt, things like that. Um, we don't honestly know the perfect level for vitamin D. You know, uh, the whole poultry community, what they study is what is the minimum requirement, not what is the optimum requirement. So
hmm
they're always worried about saving a nickel or saving a dime, right? So they're looking at what is that that least number to not jeopardize production first and health second. Um, so, like I said, we don't really know what an optimum level is. What we know is
Yeah.
what the required level is. Okay, right, and those aren't the same thing, right? Like I only require 1 scoop of ice cream, but I do a whole lot better on 3. So
Yeah. Three can
No
be more
comment.
optimal.
Yeah. No. Four's the problem. I'm good at three, right? So,
Jeff, you were talking about optimum levels and minimum levels. And I wish more people would realize that what they're seeing published are those minimum levels. And they see those and they think, oh man, I'm good to go. But
yeah.
oftentimes that's just not the case.
Well, a lot of folks aren't even looking at what the
Well,
requirements are.
that's true.
So, sadly, people make the assumption that the feed company is putting the right level in the feed. Okay. And, they're going off of like, it's called National Research Council, NRC values. Anybody can look these up. You can look up NRC values for laying hens. Okay. Well, that's going to be only for commercial laying hens, right? And
Hmm.
what is that, uh, recommended, what is that required value, right? And that gets updated about every 10 years. So it could be old, could be not, depending on when they updated it last. But that's the NRC values, National Research Council. People are welcome to go out there and dig around. It's really dry. Um, it's hard to actually find what you want, but it is a published document and it can be found on the internet. And that's where PhDs around the world, based on research studies and what they've learned, they kind of come to a conclusion and say, we believe that a chick needs this to get its life started, right? And get like the 3,000 units of vitamin A, the 1,000 units of vitamin D, 10 units of vitamin E. And those are the bare minimum. Those are the numbers that, they run with. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's so much that gets set on those numbers, right? There's so much emphasis being placed on the NRC values. Well, again, nobody's publishing optimum values and nobody really has researched optimum values, particularly in the vitamin world. Not that I've seen, right? I'm not saying it's not out there. I'm saying I haven't found it so far. Um, they're starting to have more and more, like they're always doing amino acid work. They're always doing, there's always something going on out there. Um, but the PhD community and the large poultry community kind of keep it a secret within their small circles. So they don't release it to us until it's, 10 or 15 years old or older. So we kind of have to learn it the hard way, but that's all right. That's all right. We're doing fine. We are doing good.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people, they don't want to take their best bird that's perfectly healthy, looks great, go do a necropsy and pull some blood work and see what its levels are to find out what those, you know, great levels would be.
Yeah.
So, and
Well,
that would be
yeah.
about the only way he would take some very healthy birds and
Yeah.
run those tests.
Yeah. And I don't even know if they have standards for the vitamins. Most blood work is done on vitamin or on mineral work. And here's the
Yeah.
thing about blood work, right? If any of us goes to a lab to get blood work, the majority of the blood that they're going to pull, we have to do a fasting diet. So they want to know that you haven't eaten in 12 hours. Well,
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing, right? So you would have to fast your chicken to get a true number, because if it ate 10 minutes ago or it ate half an hour ago, right? So blood values can change really quickly depending on how good the digestive tract is or isn't. Um,
Sure.
right. So, yeah, no, again, nobody set this standard. So if you feed your chickens at 8 o'clock in the morning, do we pull blood at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? I don't know. And not all chickens eat exactly at the same time. So, when I had my chickens in the backyard, then, every time you went to the feeder, 80% of them ran up to the feeder and they ate something, right? But there was always 20% that were more interested in a grasshopper or, finding an earthworm or cricket, whatever, right? And they weren't as dependent or as interested in the feed. But I don't know. Getting blood work to have a good number and know if you're even on track or not. Again, when did they eat last? What are they eating? I don't know. It would be great to know. I would love to know what optimum levels are. Now, I don't know. I know they're doing D vitamin. You can do D through blood, and I know you can do some of the B's through blood, but I have not seen like A, E, some of the other. I don't know if they can do them or not. So,
Right.
yeah, David brought up, there are new NRC tables, but he thinks the latest are from 1994, and they very well may be for poultry. I don't know when they've been updated last. Um, they don't update each species every time they do an NRC update. So,
Hmm.
That
Let's
makes sense.
let's kind of shift gears here and let's talk about some specific vitamins. You know, basically, what do they do, and what level should we be looking for in our nutrition? Let's talk about vitamin A. Now, you've already mentioned it supports vision, the immune system function, uh, skin. Anything else?
yeah, some in the feather. I mean, some of it's going to, if there's enough of it, it's going to support proper follicle and feather growth. It's going to be there, which is, that's part of the whole skin structure as well. Um, a little bit in the muscle tone sort of thing, muscle growth, development, and tone. Most of it's going for like nervous system, eye, skin, feather is where I see most of it going. You know, that's and it's got a direct connection to things like iron, and the absorption of iron, and it's gonna, again, a large portion of it's going to go into the egg. If there is a large portion, there's a large portion going to go into the egg and or the development of egg.
You were talking about the follicle and that sort of thing. Occasionally, I'll see a bird that has sort of retained part of the feather sheath as the
Hmm.
feather grows, and you'll see real ratty looking feathers. But sometimes you can break that off of there, and they'll come out of that. But could that be related to vitamin A?
It could be. It is. It in part, I believe that the vitamin A is driving some of that. That sheathing
Hmm.
is not is didn't develop right when it was still kind of in the body, and that feather was pushing.
Yeah, that's
Um,
exactly what it looks like.
yeah, and so it just didn't that sheathing didn't actually fully develop so that it can break away and fall off. Or the feather underneath that sheathing wasn't strong enough to do its job and push the sheathing off. So, but yeah, I could see vitamin A being a direct connection to that. And
Gotcha.
whether that might be more of like so the retinol is going to be more your nervous system and eye. That's
Hmm.
probably more in the carotene family.
Hmm.
Not keratin, carotene, Carotene. But I think that's going to be more in that carotene family of vitamin A's. Vitamin A's are split. There's several different sources of vitamin A. There's beta carotenes, retinols. So they're not all just straight up vitamin A. So
Right.
diversifying where your vitamins come from. And this is a big reason why I push alfalfa meal in almost all of my feeds is I'm getting a whole different set of vitamin A's from a green leafy, vegetation like alfalfa carries a high vitamin A. And it actually is one of the few plants that retains that vitamin A because it can retain its chlorophyll and its color, after preservation. Whereas a lot of other green leafy, they lose their color and they fade out. So that's why I push alfalfa meal. It helps me get that extra vitamin A that I'm looking for.
It's funny you were talking about that just about the time that Rob Guerin's comment came on, And he said, I had someone tell me that if the feather isn't getting clean of the sheathing to feed more greens, could that be vitamin A?
Yep. Yep. That's exactly what it is. But look, most of your off the shelf layer feeds are going to run 3,000 to 3,500 on vitamin A. Vitamins are expensive. I mean, vitamin A right now to somebody like me who's a vitamin blender, making products.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't look at the price list at the beginning of the month, but I think the last time I looked at it, it was like $8 and something a pound, right? So it's not cheap, you know. It's not horrible expensive, but uh, until, man, I hate to even say this, but until like Combat come out on the market and started pushing higher numbers, the commercial feed industry's been on a race to the bottom, right? To who can make the cheapest feed. And, and that's because the consumer goes in there trying to save $1 on a bag of feed. Well, you can save your dollar, but you're going to spend it somewhere else. I mean, you're just going to feed more feed.
That's like I had somebody contact me today and said he was having a hard time finding a quality feed that was economical. And I said, well, I hate to break the news to you, but you're not going to.
Yeah. Those two don't come together, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah. And we see those posts on Poultry Keepers 360 or Poultry Breeder Nutrition, or, I want to find a good feed that doesn't break the bank or is economical. Well, wait, this is kind of don't they call that an oxymoron? You can't have both,
Yes.
right? One or the other.
Yeah.
Right? So,
like trying to have your cake and eat it too.
I mean, you're not gonna go to a steakhouse and get a filet mignon for $5.
No.
It's probably a good thing. I'd spend a lot of money.
I mean, here's the challenge, right? If Rip's done it now, Kerry did it before. When you break out of the mold of buying, locally available common feed, and you actually step up to the plate and you try something that is properly formulated for breeding fowl, it is night and day. You give it 30 days.
Huge eye opener.
When you're feeding 25% less and your birds look better, I mean, it is day and night. And I'm not just trying to sell you something.
I know.
You don't even sell feed.
I don't sell feed. But every time I have to recommend All Flock or Flock Razor or whatever, it still drives me nuts because I know it's not as good as it could be, right? Yeah, it's better than some of the other stuff on the shelf, but that doesn't mean that it's great, right?
Exactly.
Well, like earlier, you were talking about vitamin A levels being in the 3,000s. Ideally, they would be over double that.
Yeah,
in an ideal world, they would be closer to 7,000 to 7,500 IUs a pound, right?
Yeah. When I'm doing breeder feeds for you or Rip, or when I'm doing breeder feeds for people who really want to do it right, I'm at minimum 6,500, right? My bottom line is 6,500, and a lot of them I'm cranking out at 7,500 or 8,000. Right, because I know what that's going to do for the chick vigor. Okay, I know what head start that's going to give the chick the day it comes out of the shell, right? And if we're breeders and we're worried about the next generation, that's where we got to spend the money. So, 30 days prior to harvesting eggs till until you're done, at least feed something. Step it up, right?
It makes a huge difference.
A huge difference.
I had somebody ask that question today, and they were like, "Hey, we want to start hatching eggs, putting eggs in the incubator around the 1st of February. How soon should we be feeding, either your feed or breeder supplement in with our feed?" And I said, Christmas time would have been the best.
Yeah, exactly.
And he said, "Really?" And I said, "Well, think about it. Anytime you start taking extra vitamins and minerals and supplements yourself, it takes time for that to get into your system and make changes. So a chicken is no different. It takes time for that stuff to get in their system and do what it's supposed to do. And he said, well, I guess we're way behind. I said, what you can do is get a really good start on next breeding season.
Yes. And honestly, I kind of got started on Jeff's recommendations after I already had a bunch of birds hatched out. Okay. And I saw a lot of improvement. Don't get me wrong. But where I saw the most improvement was the following hatching season.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't really do it intermittently. You can, right? Like if you only want to feed for the breeding season, fine. You're going to see improvements. But if you feed them at that higher level all year, you're going to go even to another level, right? I mean, you're just going to go to a
Exactly.
completely different level.
Exactly right.
Because the parent stock, both the hen and the rooster, have been fed right all year. So all their tissues, all their body functions, all their glandular work, everything is optimized, right there, and it's peaking. And that's all going to transfer to that chick, While the rooster has a small contribution, but that hen, that yolk, that quality of the protein in the whites,
A lot of it's there.
It's there.
What about vitamin E? Now that I know acts as an antioxidant, protects the cells from damage, supports immune function. But what are some optimum levels that we should be looking for?
Again, we don't
Vitamin E.
really know what optimum is. I used to run like everybody else at 15 to 20 IUs per pound. And, when I learned what vitamin E did in combating Marek's disease and other diseases, I brought up the nutrition level in our poultry NutriBalancer to 50. I honestly think 100 IUs or even 200 IUs per pound would be spot on. So there's this synergy between selenium and vitamin E. They need each other to work at a higher efficiency level, right? To get 100% out of your selenium and your vitamin E, you've got to have an ample amount of both. So, I'd love somebody to start running around 200 IUs per pound. And I think you're going to take the immune system to a completely different level. In fact, I was approached today at the conference here. A fella asked me, he goes, hey, do you want to do a video clip? He goes, is there a way to protect or guard our birds against high path avian influenza? And I said, yeah, absolutely. He goes, well, what do we got to do? I said, well, we have to break the law, one, and take the selenium level higher than what NRC or the government allows us. Not huge, not get carried away, because selenium can be toxic also, and get that vitamin, get the vitamin E level up and get the other vitamins up. I explained to him, just like I said earlier, most feeds on the market are running actually at about 50% of optimum levels on vitamins, not even 50%, right? And I said, if somebody would spend the money to feed at that higher level all the time, I said their immune system is going to function at a much higher level than if they have a mild challenge to something like high path avian influenza. It's not going to be devastating, right? It's not going to, because the bird's immune system has the ability to respond at a faster, at a much higher level, but most of the birds that are getting wiped out are birds that are being fed, at these lower levels, right? These bare minimums. You didn't give them anything to fight off a disease with, right? You just, you're just keeping them alive. It's almost like life support, That's
Well, I mean that, to get the vitamin levels up that high, like what you were talking about earlier, at $8 a pound, people are always looking for a more efficient feed. So they're not going to pay $40 for a bag of feed.
Yeah, and he asked me how much more it would be, the guy who asked me, and I, when I say $8 a pound, that is for 1 million IUs of vitamin A per gram. Okay, so the total cost to bump up like a ton of feed would be about $25. Okay, now you're talking, 55, 60 cents, about 65 cents per bag on a 50-pound bag of feed, right? It is not a big investment. This desire to feed cheap, eat cheap, all this other stuff just drives me crazy. For a few nickels more, when you're talking about, 60 cents a pound, no, not even 60 cents a pound. What am I talking about? It's like $25 a ton, right? So you're only looking at like 5 cents a pound difference. When you break that down to what one chicken's eating, you're only looking at 1.25 cents per chicken per day. Or, yeah. So, wow, if we can't afford an extra 1.25 pennies per bird per day, right, to do it right, then
you shouldn't have them.
Yeah. But, chickens are an addiction and people keep too many. Rip, I saw you laughing. I saw you laughing.
I'm just snickering over here. I'm just keep my mouth shut.
You've been there a couple times, right?
Multiple times.
Yeah.
Let's talk about B vitamins.
Okay.
And that's kind of a broad category just to say B vitamins because there's several B vitamins in there. But I think the thing that really got my attention when I switched over to Purtrell Showbird and Breeder supplement was a difference that the B vitamins made in the attitude and demeanor of my birds. I mean, and that was just 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, they
before
calm
I
right
noticed
down.
it.
They calm right down. People get worried, right? They kind of mellow right out. It's like, wait, are these the same birds? Are they sick? Are they gonna die? Right? You just well, when your bird goes from being really anxious and kind of half hyperacting all the time to, they just calm down and don't really care about anything. It's just
It was hard for me, at least at first, to wrap my mind around the fact that they were now acting normal, where previously what I was seeing was abnormal behavior.
Yeah, before you thought it was normal.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What you saw before was normal, and all of a sudden they're just really calm. They're really docile. They're fun to handle. They're not as squirmy, right? None of that, right? And you're like, is this what normal's supposed to be, right? So
Exactly right.
Now you wish as a judge everybody fed extra B vitamins, right? So when you're judging,
I would almost be willing to go through and slip them all a B vitamin, before we start judging.
Yeah.
Just stick it in the water.
Vitamin C. I know it aids in stress, reducing stress and immune support, basically the overall health of the bird. Is that really essential in poultry diets?
Not essential, but it is an antioxidant, and it's also excellent for heat stress. So if we had a way to use it when we need it, like in the middle of the summer when they're really under heat stress, here's the thing: it's really hard to hand add vitamin C to your chicken feed because we use a pure form of vitamin C, right? It's 99% vitamin C, ascorbic acid, and we are only adding either a half a pound to 1 pound, at the most 2 pounds in a complete ton of feed. So working out that percentage, you're looking at like 0.01%, of the feed. How do you even contemplate adding that? And if you get too much vitamin C, it causes diarrhea and you end up with really loose manure. and it is still an acid, so you can throw off the digestive tract a little bit. So I don't know how, short of feeding apples or oranges to your birds, especially if you wanted to freeze them and let them peck at them in the summertime, that might be your best option. We can try running a little bit through the water, but to make that feed adjustment is pretty tough. But it's been proven time and time again for heat stress. It is phenomenal, right? So
Let's talk a little bit about, I guess the best way to put it is feed storage to prohibit excessive vitamin loss. What's your recommendations there?
I mean, most of your vitamins are somewhat shelf stable. Your fat soluble vitamins like your A and your E, I don't worry about them. Vitamin D is also really stable. The vitamins I'm worried about are going to be your B class of vitamins. They are the ones, your thiamine, your niacin, your riboflavin, and riboflavin goes in at such a small amount that to have those oxidize off, before you get to feed your bird, I worry about that a little bit. The birds are are you going to see the difference? No. I mean, it's a problem for me only because of how I think about things, a little bit too much of a perfectionist at times, but you're paying for those B vitamins. And like you said, when you started feeding the show and breeder, is the B vitamins make a big difference, right? And they calm way down. So, keeping it away from air and keeping it away from heat is going to be your key factors. So, we've talked about you can package it up. If you're going to have to keep feed for more than a month, you can pack it up. You can put it in the freezer, make it airtight. That doubles your shelf life. But not a whole
I
lot.
mean, what I was doing is I like to wide mouth mason jar, and I would take a tablespoon out of the kitchen, and I would keep that inside the mason jar, and I would keep that with my feed along with my oil. But I only had that little bit. I'd get like a quart size jar and fill it halfway up. So, and I would use that, and then I would get more out of my bag from the deep freeze, so I could make sure that those vitamins did not lose their stability and make it all the way.
Yeah, and you're talking about the show and breeder, right? And
Yeah,
just feed in general that you buy, trying to keep those B vitamins going, for an extended period of time. Fortunately, I'm reading posts from folks. They're starting to read the lot numbers and figure out when the feed was made. So people are, they're now looking at how old is that feed, right? And they're talking to their tractor supply person or their feed mill person or whoever and say, look, this is old, you got anything fresh, right? And so, our education is working here, Rip. I can tell.
I agree.
I'm seeing the post, but it's it's just tough. I mean, air is going to be your heat, and air is going to be your killer of vitamins, you know. And like I said, the ones that cost you the most, which are the B vitamins, right? They're going to be the first ones to go, right? They have the least amount of stability for oxygen and heat.
Jeff, do you have any, I guess, sort of general tips and advice for, excuse me, preventing vitamin deficiencies or maybe identifying vitamin deficiency in our bird?
I'm not sure. Run that by me a different way. I'm not sure I know what you're asking 100%.
Okay. How would somebody go about preventing vitamin deficiencies in their birds?
Well, I mean, be a tag reader, see what's in the ingredient list, make sure that the vitamins are there. I mean, seeing the deficiencies 5 years ago or 4 years ago when, Show and Breeder came out, that's the reason I invented it or created it was, I could tell that what's being offered on the open market was not enough to give you the best bird, right? And that's so, honestly, I wish I didn't have to sell a supplement. I wish people would just make feed that's made the right way, right? And do it right from the beginning. But look, I take vitamins and supplements for myself because the food that I eat is not properly balanced. But I don't eat that's my fault, right? Because
Yes.
I don't eat a good diet. But um, yeah, it's sadly, these supplements have a place in our lives, whether it's for us or our chickens.
Yeah. Hey, before we go any further, I've got a little thanks to our sponsor thing I'd like to run here. So let's pay attention. We would like to take a short break to express our appreciation to the Portrell Company for their sponsorship of the Poultry Keepers 360 Live programming. Portrell has been a trusted name in sustainable farming and poultry nutrition for decades, and their commitment to providing high quality, natural products align perfectly with the values we hold dear in our poultry community. Thank you, Portrell, for partnering with us to empower poultry keepers everywhere. We're truly grateful for your dedication and support. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. And we've been talking about vitamins for a good bit in this show. Let's switch over to minerals. Uh, they are, to me, they're just equally as important as vitamins. And correct me if I'm wrong there, but I mean, minerals are important for bone and eggshell strength, enzyme function, immune health, nerves, and muscle function. Just just so many other. And honestly, I didn't know this until I heard you say it one time that it can also have an impact on the intensity of colors in our bird's plumage.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like your your iron is going to give you more deeper reds, and your manganese is going to give you ultimate in black. Um, you know, each one of them, each one of the trace minerals in the right proportion. I don't want anybody going out and buying manganese tomorrow, right? And start just kind of free willy nilly in it into their feed. Don't do that. So, look, there's this unique relationship. Like you need this much calcium, but you got to have this much phosphorus and this much magnesium and this much potassium, right? So they are all kind of hinging off of what the other one's doing, and too much of one can interfere with the uptake of another, right? So you can create a nightmare by overdosing just as bad as not having enough. So just don't go out there and think, well, I want my bird to be blacker. I'm gonna give it some manganese, or I need more red in my bird and I'm gonna up the iron, right? So just don't work that way. And for folks that are interested, after the show, they can go out and there's this thing called Mulder's Mulder mineral wheel, mineral interaction wheel. And it's really interesting where it talks about, okay, so, zinc is going to kind of control how phosphorus moves. And it kind of gives you a snapshot of mineral interaction, whether they work with each other or against each other. It's pretty cool. And it's worth taking a look at. I think it'll be an eye opener for a lot of folks. And so
Cool.
mineral interaction, it's the right levels of each one of those at the right time, right? And that's the key. Okay. And a lot of them help each other, go into the system. Like boron actually is the driver of calcium, and calcium actually is the vehicle where many other minerals are absorbed, right? But too much. Okay. So, like your optimum calcium level is around 3.5%, 3.25 to 3.75, right? Going over 3.75 is not going to give you a better eggshell. It's not going to, it's not going to help the bird. It's not, right? So you're just kind of wasting money and you're spending money on something that's really a cheap ingredient. So, like manganese, 100 parts per million, between 100 and 120 parts per million. You start going over 200 parts per million, you're running a risk of overshadowing another mineral. So each one of these, you know, it's pretty well known what level they should be at. And, we can be slightly higher. Let's just not get crazy about it.
Well, I just saw a comment earlier, and I wanted to see if I could find it here. While we're on the subject of minerals, Elizabeth Humeyer posted. She adds, if I add copper to my water to prevent algae, could I overdose my birds on copper?
You could. I mean, I don't think you're going to. I mean, copper. So most of us formulate copper at about 10 to 15 parts per million in the feed. And copper toxicity is up over 100 parts per million in the total diet. I don't think you're going to get there. I don't know how much you're using, Elizabeth, but like 1/8 of a teaspoon per gallon is plenty, right? So if you're using copper sulfate, it doesn't take much, right? It really doesn't. So the folks that are using like a penny or a piece of copper pipe or something like that, the amount of copper that's coming off of that into the water is so small, right? And it works.
And Sue Dobson makes a good point here.
Yep.
Many of the vitamins assist minerals to be better absorbed and used.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
Things all work together.
All work together.
When I think of vitamins or minerals, people always say, well, and they're familiar with the calcium for eggshells and maybe a little bit about potassium, but they don't quite understand all of the rest of them. Is there a good book that they might refer to, or would that Mulder's mineral interaction wheel provide some additional information?
Mulder's only shows you how minerals work together or work against each other, right? That's all it does. It doesn't give you levels. It doesn't tell you where you need to be. You and Carrie.
I know a good book.
You and Carrie. I
know a good book.
You guys already have commercial poultry nutrition, on your shelf, right? I don't expect everybody to go buy commercial poultry nutrition. The data we've talked about.
I mean, you address a lot of it in niche poultry.
I do.
Yeah.
And
what I've done. That's what I was going to say is that book, because you list a lot of that stuff in there.
Right. And I've pulled that out of commercial poultry I've pulled that out of commercial poultry nutrition and translated it from, kilograms to pounds, for our market here for folks to understand, and again, those are the requirements. Those are the minimum requirements. They're not optimum levels. Nobody really reports those optimum levels. The Hubbard breeding information that we've posted many times on here, Hubbard breeders, their management and nutrition probably as good as any. But, we're working in an unknown zone. Like, we don't know what that perfect level is or what that optimum level is, because all of our PhDs and all of our scientists are working on what can we do to minimize and get costs down. They're not out there. There's no money in researching. Nobody's going to sponsor them, there's no money to research what is the optimum levels of all of these nutrients, right? That's just not how society works. It's all about saving money, right? So,
Jeff, incidentally, I just found today when I was looking for something else, but I found a free PDF copy of Commercial Poultry Nutrition.
Yeah. Do you have the link still handy? You can post it for people if they're curious.
Yeah, I can post that tomorrow. Sure can.
Okay.
A couple of interesting questions and comments here. Christopher wants to know any additives to add in feed or water to make my broiler meat chicken featherless. I guess maybe he's trying to avoid plucking.
I mean,
No.
if you buy those Cornish crosses, they pretty close to it.
Yeah, there's not many feathers on them.
Well, if you keep the amino acids down, if you keep the cysteine and methionine down a little bit, yeah, they don't grow feathers very well at all. So, but yeah,
Yeah, but the only way to do that would be to buy crap feed.
Yeah,
and then it would affect the flavor profile and everything else, and they wouldn't have the growth rate or anything else you need.
right. They're not going to grow very fast, that's for sure. But
Mm.
there is a I don't know where it's at. I have to find it, but there is a naked chicken. There is a
Yes.
featherless
Yes.
chicken out there, and actually, I mean, it's all pink. It's kind of a weird colored chicken, but the pictures I've seen is it looks pretty meaty, like a breast or
It does.
something like that.
It does.
It's actually got some pretty good muscle development. But
Last time I was checking into those, they were the only place I was able to find them is a couple of universities had some.
Okay, I thought they were out of India or China, but I'm not sure.
I think so.
Yeah.
Over that way somewhere.
Well, if somebody wants to send me a dozen of those hatching eggs for science,
Yeah.
I would be willing to feed them really well and check the growth rate on that.
Well,
Not have to use the
after the show, go and Google the naked chicken pictures, and you'll see them. I mean, they're a real thing. And
I don't really know that I want to do that, because I feel like if I type in naked chicken, it may give me a lot of unwanted stuff too.
Yeah, you got to kind of be careful what you search for on Google.
All right, you can go featherless, right? You can go featherless.
Yeah.
Rob found it. He goes, the original featherless chicken. The featherless chicken was originally developed for Israel. So
he also said you keep your protein low enough, they'll pluck each other.
That's 100% true.
Yep.
You keep that methionine level low enough, they're going to eat off their brothers and sisters.
But that's not really what you want anyway. So
no.
Kevin Hatley wants to know, how does someone who knows nothing find quality feed? And I know we've addressed that several times, but it's not easy. It's not easy because there's really not much over-the-counter feed, honestly, that I would feed to my birds. But I've been spoiled.
Rip, you've had a revelation in your life, right? You've come over to the dark side.
Well, no, I prefer to think about it. I moved from the dark into the light.
There you go. You did. Kevin, all you can do. Okay, so we've had shows on how to read tags, what you're looking for, nutrient levels, things like that. So you may want to go back and look through the archives. We talk about optimum levels and actually going through the ingredient list and looking at, okay, what are the ingredients? What do they mean? Right. If that don't work for you, you can always post a picture. People do this every day. You can post a picture of your feed tag, to Poultry Keepers 360 or Poultry Breeder Nutrition. Now, be careful, because some of us are extremely blunt and obtuse, and we will happily tell you that is garbage. See? So
no,
if you're a sensitive kind of person, probably shouldn't post your feed tag.
Yeah. Right? Kevin, one thing I would suggest, if you're new to this, and it sounds like you are, I would get a copy of Jeff Maddox's book, Niche Poultry, Feeding and Management. And a lot of that information is covered in Jeff's book. It's a great resource to have. And it's not just nutrition, but it's about poultry management. And, when you stop and think about it, nutrition and poultry management impacts our birds at every stage of their life.
I have to hire you two for book sales.
It talks. I mean, I did sell one or two for you today.
Yeah.
In that book, it talks about brooding, feed selection, all kinds of stuff. So if you are a new chicken tender, and you're looking for those ideas, you could either get that book, or like Jeff said, go watch a lot of the videos where we address some of the specific topics that you're looking for. I learned a lot from this show when it started. So Yeah.
David has a question here. Whoops, I clicked on the wrong one. Sorry. Hang on.
That was true though.
Yeah. Who is the best oil? I think they mean what is the best oil in poultry nutrition? And, we've talked about it before that our preference is for coconut oils and olive oils. Animal fats are good, like lard or tallow. But to me, those are the top ones, I think. But
Yeah,
I
I
know
mean,
there's others out there.
yeah, I would, and I apologize, we did not talk about this in like the earlier shows last year before, but honestly, if you can get them, tallow first, right, and then lard second, then you're going to go into your coconut and your olive. Somebody asked about camelina oil, which is also outstanding, right? And then after that, pretty much all of your seed oils, in my opinion, are going to be pretty equal in their nutritional value. So
I got to admit, I'm pretty tight with any lard I might have because I like to use that in biscuits.
yeah, I'll
But
bet. I posted the link to the book in the comment section for folks, so if they want to find it, um, it's there.
I'll leave that up for a little minute. Jeff, I realize we're getting kind of short on time here,
That's right.
but let's talk about metabolizable energy, what it is and why it's important.
All right. So we know that each grain or everything that goes into any diet, right, is measured. So its energy is measured in. So depending on what species of animal, it's different. It's a calculation, but like metabolized energy is the amount of calories that are assumed to be digested by the chicken, right? So it'll be poultry, capital ME. Here in the U.S., we measure them on kilocalories per pound. When you go abroad outside the U.S., and then it's always in metric. It'll be kilocalories per kilogram, right? And so we're trying to. It's the only standardized method that we know of as far as energy for getting the right amount of calories into our chickens every day. And like a laying hen is going to be right around 320 kilocalories per day, right? Meat birds, we don't really track it during the starter and the grower phase because they get full feed. But we're looking at per pound basis, I'm like 1,360 up to 1,400. I don't like to quite get above 1,400. Then we start having things like heart attacks and so on. 1,350, 1,380 in the starter feed, dropping that down to now for our type of birds here, not for meat development birds, want to drop down into like 13 to 1320, for that grower phase, because I don't want them to start putting on fat, right? I don't want them to start developing fat in the first 6 weeks or the second 6 weeks. Then when you drop into a developer phase, we're even going to drop that energy slightly lower, 1280 to 1300. And even at that level, they're going to start putting on small body fat deposits, right? Not, in around the thigh, not a huge amount of pad fat in the abdomen, but they're going to start, under the skin. They're going to start building up a little bit of fat because they're going to need that when they start laying. Okay. And, but it's, yeah. So, metabolized energy is a calculated value, and, corn is king. And then everything, like corn is 1,500, 1,540, depending on the quality of the corn. Wheat is 1,440, barley's 1,250. Oats is 1080, field peas are 1,300. So, everything has been assigned an energy value. And in a laboratory, they burn it and they measure the BTUs that come off of that. And then it goes into a calculation. It's a long, laborious calculation to assign it an energy value. Well, the energy for a horse the energy calculation for a horse is different from a chicken, different than a pig, different than a dog, different than a rabbit, right? So somewhere back in time, they've studied, the efficiency of each animal and their ability to digest energy. And that's gone into this really big math equation on assigning these values. Okay. So it's based on fat, fiber, carbohydrates that they measured when they burned. And that's more than people really wanted to know about metabolized energy. So,
Here's a question, Jeff. Uh, Nicole wants to know, is fish meal preferred over other kinds of animal protein sources or even insect protein sources? Or is it just the most cost effective option?
yeah, it's not the most cost effective option. So most of your like insect protein sources, believe it or not, they're feeding like cricket, mealworm, etc. They feed chicken feed to these animals. So, you know, I don't know that you're gaining anything on most of the insect meals. Even like black soldier flies feeding on mostly plant residue, from produce and so on, depending on where they come from. Some places they feed them animal manure and meat and bone products. I only go, so I'm a big proponent of fish meal, and here's why: because it's a wild harvested out of the ocean. To me, it is a cleaner. There's no risk of antibiotic residues or other medications coming through, right? And there's less risk of like cancer cells from an animal that was about to die that went to the rendering plant. So I'm avoiding other possibilities. Okay. And that's why I'm a big fan of fish meal. If you had a good source of like, pork, meat and bone meal, ruminant meat and bone meal, if you were satisfied that it was a clean source, those can all be used in formulating a poultry diet. I just, again, back to my perfectionism, I lean towards the best source I can find, and to me, that's fish meal.
Agreed. Let's see. Question here from David. What are the recommended levels of metabolizable energy in gamecock feed before the show?
Oh man, this is almost like talking about politics and religion because there's one side of the fence thinks you want to carb load them, and you really want them to be, have a bunch of carbohydrates and energy in them. I'd much rather have the bird at, around 1,300 kilocalories per pound, but I would like to have the fat level a little bit higher, or have the bird burning fat, stored body fat, coming up, close to the show. It just, I think they're healthier when they're burning body fat stores than, you know, I don't understand carb loading. And let me just say it a different way, right? You eat a big meal that has a big dessert at the end of it, for us, like Thanksgiving, right? And you eat a couple pieces of pie, which one would have been enough. The next thing you know, about an hour later, when all that sugar is winding down in your body, you fall asleep. Okay. It puts you to sleep. So controlling the carb load and understanding the carb crash that follows it, the timing is really important. So if I never go to carb loading and I'm running off of more of like a keto diet, burning fat, the energy level is more consistent, right? And it's going to maintain throughout. And that's my 2 cents worth, right? And I know there's a whole lot of people that would disagree with me, but that's all right.
Elizabeth Humeyer says, some of us are old enough to remember total digestible nutrients or
Yeah,
TDNs.
TDNs, absolutely. Yeah. TDNs was actually, I don't know how it played in for poultry. I know they tracked that number pretty well for swine, and it was a huge number back when I was a younger man for doing ruminant and dairy feeds. And but yeah, we don't see TDN being used much anymore. They broke it all apart into individual nutrients and levels. Um,
I was sitting here thinking, I can't remember the last time I saw TDNs mentioned.
yeah, yeah. I mean, my feed program will still calculate for TDN, um, but yeah, it's not, and it's not even a true measured number, but it was like this quick reference number that you could look at a TDN and, well, if you were above 80%, man, you were cooking with gas. This was good stuff, right? And um, but yeah, anymore we don't really, you don't see TDN used. Rip, you and I are old enough to remember these things, but I don't.
It's been ages since I've seen it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I wonder how old Elizabeth is. Don't answer that question.
No,
I
no,
don't really
no.
want to know. Okay, but I'm just, you know, um,
Rob makes a good point
I'll
here.
just
So
leave it alone. Huh?
I said, Rob makes a good point. It says, so the nutrition label on a bag of chicken feed will give the metabolized nutrition for chickens and not a generic amount for all animals.
Yeah.
I think we've about got all our questions answered. Let me scroll back up to see if I missed one. We've had a lot of good feedback and
Go
a lot
ahead,
of good
man.
back and forth. Um, Joey wants to know if I wanted to add selenium to their diet, what source is recommended? Human capsules? How much?
All right, Joey, we got to do the math on this. Okay, so your feed is calculated at 0.3 parts per million. Okay, I would not want to do more than double that, right, and take it to 0.6. Okay, anything over 0.6, I think we're flirting with fire. So in an immune stressed environment or in a known health situation, the selenium yeast products tend to be absorbed faster and be utilized at a higher level. So you would be looking for like the Alltech selenium yeast, and there's two or three others on the market that make a selenium yeast product, but you just need a very small amount of a selenium yeast. But typically, sodium selenite is what's being used in most feeds. Um, we'd have to work together, look at the labels on what human capsule you got, and just do the math. Again, your feed's already at 0.3, 0.25 to 0.3. I wouldn't want to do more than double that. And that's going to be some long math to get that figured out, but it can be done. Yep. And it will.
And Jeff calculates math best at around 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the morning.
In the morning.
Yes,
Right?
a.m. for sure.
It's not going to happen tonight. So
Those math things make my head hurt. I was never my strong suit.
yeah, I suck at English and reading and all that on that side of it, but science and math, I'm a happy camper.
Well, guys, I think we had a good show tonight, and I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate all our our listeners for joining us, and some good interaction and good feedback and good comments. We always appreciate those. I want to encourage you to be sure and join us in 2 weeks when we are back with another show. And we realized, it's probably about time to do another Flock Talk series where we just do questions and answers. We always get a lot of good interaction on that show, and I know Jeff enjoys them. I enjoy them. And I'm pretty sure that Kerry enjoys them too, because I know he has fun with them when he does his podcast. So until 2 weeks, keep enjoying your birds, and folks, Have a good 2 weeks. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.